I'm standing on my front porch, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn of Red Maple Grove, when I see him, Randy, the part-time sheriff's deputy with a full-time ego, pointing a loaded gun at my son, Jason, over a bird feeder. Yes, a bird feeder. The kind you hang on a tree to attract cardinals and blue jays, not the kind that sparks a suburban showdown. Behind Randy stands Karen, the self-appointed HOA president, clutching her clipboard like a scepter, her smug, lemon-sucking grin practically glowing under the daylight. This isn't just a neighborhood dispute. This is a war, one that started with petty fines and passive-aggressive notes and escalated into a battle for control, freedom, and the right to live in peace. And Karen? She had no idea she'd just picked a fight with the wrong veteran. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the quiet cul-de-sacs and trimmed hedges of Red Maple Grove, where my husband and I moved after retirement, chasing the promise of calm mornings sipping coffee and feeding birds. We wanted a place to grow old, to host potlucks with overcooked casseroles and suspiciously identical pies, to maybe die in peace. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Rows of tidy houses, mailboxes painted in HOA-approved shades, and neighbors who waved politely while secretly judging your lawn height. It was predictable, safe, the kind of place where Christmas decorations go up on November 1st and stay until January 15th. But no one warned us about Karen. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a regime. The kind of woman who wore visors unironically, walked a schnauzer named Muffin, and printed citations for ornamental disobedience, her actual words when she fined the Johnsons for their lawn gnome dressed like Elvis. She'd taken over the HOA board 2 years earlier, unopposed, because no one else wanted the job. That was our first mistake. At first, her reign was subtle, newsletters about garbage bin placement, holiday banners, and passive-aggressive reminders to trim your hedges. But power has a way of changing people, and Karen wasn't dancing the usual HOA waltz anymore. She was rewriting bylaws like she was carving commandments into stone tablets, turning Red Maple Grove into her personal fiefdom. It started small. A note slipped into our mailbox about our flagpole being half an inch too tall per HOA Code 4.3. Then a complaint that our garden gnome, affectionately named Gerald, was non-compliant ornamentation. My husband and I laughed it off, thinking Karen was just bored or lonely, maybe in need of a hobby that didn't involve measuring grass blades. But boredom doesn't explain the fines that started piling up. $7 for a non-regulation mailbox handle. $200 for unauthorized paint tone variation on our garage trim. Karen wasn't just nitpicking, she was wielding her clipboard like a blunt object, and she loved the sound it made when it hit. Karen had run for HOA president unopposed, then rewrote the rules to ensure no one else could challenge her. She chaired every meeting, controlled the voting procedures, and silenced anyone who dared question her vision for Red Maple Grove. Neighbors stopped seeing her as a busybody and started locking their gates, whispering about her in driveways. She wasn't a neighbor anymore, she was a dictator with a yardstick. And then she met Randy. Randy wasn't officially part of the HOA, but you wouldn't know it from the way he patrolled the block in his cruiser, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the fear in our eyes. A part-time deputy with a badge and an attitude, he started showing up everywhere. Knocking on doors, checking on things, citing people for infractions under the guise of code enforcement. Some neighbors liked the attention, mistaking his presence for security. Others saw it for what it was, suburban surveillance. Karen and Randy became a duo, armed with clipboards, cameras, and what I swear was a laminated HOA Bible. They snapped photos of faded shutters, issued fines for non-compliant porch cushions, and called it beautification enforcement. We called it tyranny. The first time I knew we were in real trouble was when Karen showed up at our door with a tape measure. "I'm just checking your mailbox," she said, her voice dripping with fake cheer. "It looks half an inch too high." I blinked, unsure if she was serious. She was. "Code 3.4, she explained, before fining us $50. A week later, she was back, this time citing us for unauthorized hose visibility. Apparently, my green garden hose disrupted the visual harmony of the neighborhood, never mind that I was watering roses in 90-degree heat. Karen had decreed that hoses must be neutral tones only. That was strike 2. Strike 3 came when my son, Jason, returned home from deployment. Jason is quiet, the kind of man who mows the lawn every Sunday, says "ma'am" to everyone, even the cat, and keeps to himself. He's a special forces veteran, trained to stay calm under pressure, to face threats most of us can't imagine. He'd served 4 tours overseas, seen things no one should, and yet the only thing that seemed to rattle him was HOA drama. When he parked his F-250 in our driveway, Karen pounced like a hawk spotting a mouse in an unapproved flower bed. "It's too wide," she said, her visor casting a shadow across her clipboard. "The tires exceed the parking boundary lines by 2 inches, and we don't allow vehicles that size overnight." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You mean the truck that's legally parked on my family's private property?" Karen smiled, the kind of smile that says she's found a loophole. "It's technically common property if the front tires cross the curb. We'll be issuing a $170 fine." Jason didn't argue. He just nodded, his face unreadable, his calm so absolute it made my stomach twist. I knew that look. It wasn't surrender, it was strategy. Things escalated from there. Karen's compliance crusade grew bolder. She fined the Johnsons for unapproved window tinting, the Harts for flag placement proximity, and even poor Mrs. Lennox, 84 and blind in one eye, for excessive bird bath algae. Neighbors started whispering about moving, but most were too afraid to speak out. Karen had manipulated proxy votes, rewritten meeting rules, and made herself president for life. She had Randy, she had the bylaws, and she had a clipboard with more power than sense. But what she didn't have was Jason. Jason didn't yell or confront her. He watched. He listened. And every night, I saw him on his laptop, typing, researching, building a folder of screenshots, dates, and Karen's questionable decisions. HOA bylaws are public record, and Jason had a long memory. He knew Karen's reign wasn't just annoying, it was vulnerable. And he was waiting for the right moment to prove it. That moment came with the bird feeder. Jason hung it on the old oak in our front yard, a small act of peace after years of war. He'd sit on the porch with coffee, watching cardinals and blue jays, finding calm in their chaos. Karen hated it. "It's not HOA approved," she declared, citing code 6.8b, no wildlife attracting devices. Jason pointed to 3 other houses with feeders. "You find them?" Her grin was pure venom. "They're on the list." 3 days later, a $300 fine arrived in the mail. Jason didn't flinch. He just said, "Okay." In Jason speak, that meant war. Karen upped the ante by installing surveillance cameras on HOA property, aimed directly at our house. She claimed it was for community security, but the cameras only pointed one way, at us. We responded by planting pine straw across the front yard, a move Jason triple-checked was HOA legal. Karen called it landscape aggression and held an emergency board meeting, alone, where she proposed a new rule, no natural mulch without prior approval. It passed, 1-0. Jason appealed. She denied it. He appealed again. She fined us $500. That's when I found him in the garage, polishing a folder of documents thicker than a phone book. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just preparing," he said, his voice steady. Sometimes, the quiet guy in the room is the one who hasn't spoken yet. The neighborhood was cracking under Karen's rule. Lawns were trimmed with military precision, not out of pride, but fear. Neighbors spoke in whispers, avoiding Karen's gaze. You could feel her clipboard breathing down your neck. And just when we thought she'd run out of rules to invent, she targeted our dog, Max, a 12-year-old golden retriever with arthritis and a fear of squirrels. Max barked once at a squirrel, not a person, and Karen filed an animal aggression complaint, citing code 7.124 noise disruption. She fined us $200 and warned, one more incident, and animal control will be notified. That was the moment I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Jason clenched his jaw. My son, who'd been through villages where no one comes back whole, who'd led missions that don't get written down, was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. That night, he printed every HOA code ever written. He highlighted every violation Karen had overlooked on her own property: illegal pavers, 2 trash bins instead of 1, a backyard shed with no permit. Then he did something I'll never forget. He knocked on neighbors' doors. Turns out, Jason wasn't the only one keeping records. The Harts had audio of Randy making inappropriate comments during a compliance walk. The Johnsons had footage of Karen digging up their decorative plants, which she later fined them for being dead. Even Mrs. Lennox had saved every citation, 27 in total, all suspiciously vague. Jason compiled it all into a 48-page dossier, labeled and timestamped. Then he drove it to the county HOA regulatory office. When an HOA abuses its authority and multiple households come forward with proof, people listen, especially when one of those people is a decorated veteran with connections in federal oversight. Jason filed a formal complaint citing abuse of power, conflict of interest, and possible civil rights violations. But he wasn't done. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse, uninviting us. Jason showed up anyway, in his uniform, not to intimidate, but to remind them who he was. Someone who'd fought for the freedoms Karen was choking with her laminated bylaws. He sat in the back, silent, while Karen ranted about non-compliant residents and subversive attitudes. Then he raised his hand and asked, "Madam President, can you explain how HOA funds were used to pay for surveillance cameras pointed at my family's home without a community vote, notice, or legal permit?" The room froze. Karen blinked. Someone gasped. Jason pulled out a bank record, page 6, HOA check number 4889, security equipment purchased with community funds, installed without authorization. Karen stammered about emergency powers, but the room had shifted. Neighbors muttered, heads turned. Someone whispered, "She used our money for that." Jason leaned back, silent. He didn't need to say more. The next morning, Randy arrived with 2 officers, claiming a community safety report. They demanded Jason remove our flagpole, an 8-year fixture now deemed a hazard. Jason refused. Randy stepped forward, unholstered his gun, and pointed it at my son. No warning, just rage wrapped in a badge. Karen stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, smiling like she'd won. Jason didn't move. "This is all being recorded," he said calmly. It was 3 angles, our doorbell cam, Jason's chest cam, and a neighbor's phone across the street. What Karen and Randy didn't know was that Jason had filed for a restraining order 2 days earlier, granted that morning. Randy was violating a court order by stepping onto our property, and he just committed assault with a deadly weapon on video. Within the hour, county deputies, real ones, cuffed Randy on our lawn. Karen screamed, tried to block the view, claimed Jason had set them up. No one believed her. Neighbors peeked through blinds, some clapped. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hand, hit the pavement, and stayed there. Jason picked it up, read the top page, and smiled. Karen had illegally signed off on her own HOA paycheck, 3 times the legal amount. The investigators would handle that. The thing about Karen was, she never planned for defeat. People like her, clipboard tyrants in yoga pants, plan for domination, for ruling over plastic flamingos and patio furniture like suburban royalty. But even HOA queens answer to the law. And Jason was done playing nice. After Randy's arrest, Karen doubled down, sending a newsletter titled, "Maintaining Order in Times of Disruption." She accused Jason of staging a false flag incident and called us unpatriotic. The gall was staggering, accusing a special forces veteran of unpatriotism. But that email was her downfall. She CC'd the county board and Jason's lawyer, a civil rights bulldog specializing in HOA overreach. Karen's actions weren't just annoying, they were illegal: unauthorized purchases, illegal surveillance, falsified votes. The lawyer and Jason compiled everything. Fake citations, doctored budgets, footage of Karen trespassing, and financial records showing Karen paid herself an unapproved $18,000 stipend over 3 years. The county called a hearing, moved to the town library's auditorium when residents overflowed the room. People brought printouts of fines. One guy held his dead gnome as evidence. Karen arrived in pearls, clutching 2 folders, no lawyer, thinking she could talk her way out. Jason sat front row. When he stood, the room fell silent. He didn't yell, just presented every violation with timestamps and visuals: Randy shouting, Karen ripping up decorations at 2 a.m., forged proxy votes. He handed over a folder: Chronology of HOA Abuse, Red Maple Grove 2020 to 2024, with a whistleblower letter from a bullied former treasurer. The panel recessed for 40 minutes, then returned. Karen Mitchell, you are removed from the HOA board, effective immediately. Further investigation will be handled by the district attorney's office. The room erupted in applause. Karen stormed out, her clipboard falling. No one picked it up. A temporary board was appointed. Jason declined a seat, wanting peace and bird watching. The neighborhood revised bylaws, legalizing bird feeders, normal-sized trucks, and flamingos. An audit launched, charges filed against Karen for embezzlement and fraud. Randy lost his badge. Karen tried moving, but her story followed her. She's renting a condo now, no HOA. We planted a second flagpole with a POW-MIA banner. Revenge came with a gavel and a newsletter: Welcome back sanity. But Karen wasn't done. 2 weeks later, she filed a $250,000 defamation lawsuit against the neighborhood, claiming emotional distress and loss of leadership opportunities. The trial lasted 4 days. Karen's lawyer called it an internet mob. The HOA's team, backed by 30 residents, showed illegally signed checks, forged ballots, and the bird feeder email, now a meme. Jason testified, calm. I didn't fight for this country so someone with a clipboard could tell my mother what color hose to use. The judge dismissed the case, ordering Karen to pay $18,400 in legal fees. Her bank account froze, her condo lease ended, her LinkedIn vanished. Red Maple Grove was Karen-proof. The neighborhood bloomed. A block party, the first in years, saw kids on bikes, dogs barking, and gnomes returning. Jason got a sign: HOA Eagle, hero of the area. He hung it by the flag. Max, our retriever, seemed lighter. The bird feeder still hangs, attracting blue jays, 100% compliant. No one checks anymore. Karen's legacy is a cautionary tale. She tried Arizona, but her story followed. She's clipboard-free now, somewhere far away. Jason and I walked the block one evening, passing the spot where Randy pulled his gun, now a community herb garden. Funny how peace feels louder than chaos, Jason said. I nodded. Especially when you fight for it. This wasn't just about Karen. It's about what happens when we stop paying attention, when we let apathy win. Power loves a vacuum. Karen took control because we didn't show up. Bad rules slip in when no one's looking. Document everything. Jason's paper trail outshone Karen's voice. Community beats control. Neighbors united toppled her. Justice moves slow, but it moves. Now, I want your story. Have you faced a Karen? What's the most ridiculous HOA rule you've seen? Share below. Let's build a community that knows the difference between rules and egos. And if this gave you a laugh or a chill, like, share, and subscribe for more HOA tales. Some wars are fought on battlefields, others on lawns, and sometimes, the strongest weapon is a well-placed bird feeder.